Hello, it's July the 14th. This is Renew Every Morning, and my name is Paul Anderson-Walsh. Welcome along. Today we're continuing in our Postcards of Grace series, and I have a lovely character to talk to you about today called Simon of Cyrene, the one who carried the cross. Well, Simon's name means hearing, or if you like, heard, and he has been, hasn't he? We've all heard of what he did that day, every single one of us. But remember this, what's interesting about Simon being kind of pressed into service on that particular day was Simon wasn't a disciple. He wasn't someone who was taken from the core group or anything. He was just passing by. Or maybe he had come into Jerusalem for a specific reason, which we'll talk about in a minute. But he was a traveller, and he was from Cyrene in North Africa. Likely he was in Jerusalem for the Passover. There are a lot of religious feast tourists that would have come into the area. And in a moment, he's pulled from the crowd, total just a sea of faces, and he's pulled from the anonymity of the crowd into the greatest story that was ever told. I mean, it is just quite extraordinary when you think about it. Mark tells us now that, and this is where this story becomes even more interesting for me, that he was the father of Alexander and Rufus. Now, I think that's worth bearing in mind, which, if you know, they were sons of the early church. And in Romans 16, I think it is, Paul sends greetings to Rufus and his mother, who became like a mother to Paul. So you just wonder whether or not in this little moment of from anonymity, from coming to the Passover, coming to witness as an outsider, because remember, he's not part of the community, he wouldn't have been an insider to this story, but as an outsider, nonetheless, he's now integrated, embedded into the story of the new covenant. It's really very interesting, and I just think that's such a powerful idea that this man who was plucked from the crowd, he is the father of Alexander and Rufus. Alexander and Rufus are mentioned in Romans 16, and Alexander's mother is referenced by Paul as being something like a mother to himself. I mean, that is quite extraordinary. So this tells us something about what Simon did wasn't just for a moment, it was for a legacy. And I think sometimes we forget that. We think that what we do now only has relevance for now, but that's not true. What we do sows seeds into the future. Every act we have is sowing seeds into the future. And actually, I think every act of love and kindness and generosity can not only sow seeds into the future, into future generations, but also can sow healing back into past ancestral generations. Because that goodness, we're connected, aren't we? We're we're connected with our past and with our future relations. And so what we are doing has a massive impact on not only potentially healing the past, but preparing the way. So I think there's something quite interesting about this. Now, he was compelled to carry the cross. He was forced, and he was commissioned to it. There wasn't something he put up his hand and said, "Oh yes, I'd like to do that." He was drafted into the drama of redemption. But I want to show you something rather important here, because this is a really point of great beauty. Simon of Cyrene was forced to carry the cross for Jesus. Yet Jesus chooses to carry the cross for the world. And I think that's beautiful. So Jesus is carrying the cross for Simon, and of course he's carrying it for us. Luke says that Simon walked behind Jesus with the cross. And that's quite interesting. And so he's kind of, in doing so, he's kind of unwittingly fulfilled the call of the disciple. Can you imagine the absolute sheer honor of carrying the cross for the Christ? I mean, that is incredible. And of course, remember in the scripture it says, and this is why it's such a nice fulfillment, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up the cross and follow me. And Simon is the actual embodiment of taking up the cross and following Jesus, literally Jesus' cross. It's quite extraordinary. Now, Simon is black. And again, I say that because there's so much to talk about the inequity and inequality and the injustices of that particular period. But grace cuts through all of that. So although he's a black man, therefore a stranger in Jerusalem, he becomes the only person who physically carries Jesus' burden. And I think that's just profound, that nobody from the inside, nobody from Jesus's sect or community, if you like, step up to carry his burden. Someone who is the most outside of outsiders does it. And I just think there's a point to that. You see, sometimes you don't choose the burden, do you? Sometimes the burden chooses you. And you may have a weight that you're carrying that you didn't choose. You were pressed into it. You were kind of conscripted into it. But remember, you might not have chosen that, but it might have chosen you. And it may be that it's entirely part of God's divine plan that at this point in time hasn't been disclosed to you. So walk and carry it with grace. Because what's happening is God will birth something deeper in it. He's birthed something much deeper than duty. In the case of Simon, he birthed devotion and delight. Now, Simon's act wasn't glamorous. We can't say that at any level, can we? It was with gritted teeth and on bent knees he dragged that cross up to the hill of Golgotha. But it brought him so close to Jesus that he could actually feel the weight, the blood, the breath, the whole of it. And that's what grace is really about. It kind of finds us on the margins. It interrupts the plans we had, and it invites us or hands us a burden, a chance to become something internal. I mean, that's the thing of suffering, isn't it? Without suffering, there is no sense of what it is to stand in glory. Now, some traditions obviously talk about Simon becoming a follower. That's obvious. It's clear that it is the case because his sons were leaders in the church. And maybe that's, again, this is Africa's link to the gospel. Imagine, just hold that thought in your mind. Africa's connected to the gospel through Golgotha. It's just that, my friends, is grace in action. So I hope you're encouraged by that, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Tomorrow, if you're with us again, we'll have another study. And I'm thinking these postcards are kind of gathering a little bit of momentum, and they're gathering interest from you, so I thank you so much. So we'll just keep rolling with the postcards for a while and see where that takes us. But I hope wherever today takes you, it takes you into a place where if you're carrying a cross, you know very well that you're carrying it not only for, but as Christ. All right, bless your heart. Have a good day. Bye-bye.